Isaac Hopkins had defended 37 clients in his 12-year career as a criminal defense attorney. He'd won 29 of those cases. The 8 losses still haunted him, their faces appearing in his dreams on particularly difficult nights. But none of those losses had been because his client was actually guilty. They'd been failures of evidence, of circumstance, of juries who couldn't see past reasonable doubt. That perfect record was about to be tested. The law offices of Hopkins and Associates occupied the 7th floor of a renovated building in downtown Portland. Isaac sat in his office, fingers drumming against the mahogany desk his father had given him when he'd passed the bar. The brass nameplate caught the afternoon light. Isaac Hopkins, attorney at law. His father would have been proud. Would have been if he'd lived long enough to see it. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Hopkins? Your 4 o'clock is here," his paralegal, Sage Stewart, announced from the doorway. She was 26, sharp as a surgical blade, and had an uncanny ability to spot inconsistencies in witness statements. Isaac had hired her straight out of law school, and she'd proven invaluable. "Send them in." Elias Larson entered the office with the careful movements of a man who'd been beaten down by life. He was 42 but looked 50, with premature gray streaking his dark hair and deep lines carved around his eyes. Behind him came his sister, Trinity Thompson, whose fierce protectiveness radiated from every tense muscle in her body. "Mr. Hopkins," Elias said, his voice quiet but steady. "Thank you for seeing us." Isaac gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "Please sit. Tell me everything." The story that unfolded over the next hour should have been simple. Elias Larson worked as a maintenance supervisor at Cascade Heights Preparatory Academy, an elite private school where tuition cost more than most people's annual salaries. 6 months ago, a 17-year-old student named Sienna Cox had accused him of assault. Not just any assault, but a vicious attack in the school's basement maintenance area that had left her hospitalized with a concussion and broken ribs. "I didn't do it," Elias said, and Isaac had heard those words countless times before. But something in the man's eyes, a genuine bewilderment mixed with exhaustion, made Isaac lean forward. "Walk me through that day. Every detail." Elias closed his eyes, remembering. October 15th, Tuesday. I clocked in at 7 a.m., same as always. Had my regular rounds, fixing a leaky faucet in the science wing, replacing bulbs in the auditorium. Around 2 p.m., I got a call about a furnace issue in the basement. I went down, checked it out. Nothing major, just needed adjustment. "What time did you leave the basement?" 2:45. I logged it in my work tablet like always. Then I went up to the main office to file my report. Mrs. Chun, the administrative assistant, can confirm I was there from 3 until 3:30. We talked about her son's graduation. Trinity leaned forward. "They found Sienna in that basement at 3:15, Mr. Hopkins. My brother was in the main office with 6 witnesses. The timeline doesn't work." Isaac made notes on his legal pad. "What did the prosecution say about that?" "They claim I attacked her earlier, that she didn't report it immediately because she was in shock. They say she stumbled around for 30 minutes before someone found her." Elias's hands clenched into fists, but the medical report showed fresh injuries. The doctor said she'd been attacked within minutes of being found, not 30 minutes before. Now that was interesting. "Who's prosecuting?" Isaac asked Sage, who stood by the door with her tablet. "Damian Hoffman." Isaac's pen stopped moving. Damian Hoffman. Of course it was. The man had a conviction rate of 93% and the ethics of a starving shark. He was ruthless, brilliant, and had political ambitions that everyone knew reached all the way to the governor's mansion. A high-profile case involving an elite prep school and a 17-year-old victim? That was campaign gold. "Mr. Larson, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty." Isaac set down his pen and met the man's eyes. "Is there any reason Sienna Cox would target you specifically? Any interaction that could be misinterpreted?" "No," Elias said firmly. "I barely knew her. She was quiet, kept to herself. The only time we ever spoke was once when she asked me to unlock a classroom she'd left her bag in." Trinity pulled out her phone. "But we found something, Mr. Hopkins. Sienna's social media, her friends, her whole life. She was dating someone." She handed him the phone. The Instagram profile showed a pretty girl with dark hair and a cautious smile. But it was the comments section that caught Isaac's attention. Multiple references to B and heart emojis. Then, 3 weeks before the alleged attack, a post. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us. B? Isaac asked. We think it's Brian White, Trinity said. He's a senior at Cascade Heights. His father is Preston Woods. Isaac knew that name. Everyone in Portland knew that name. Preston Woods owned half the commercial real estate in the city and sat on the school's board of directors. You think the son is involved? I think someone is setting my brother up, Trinity said, her voice hard. And I think it has something to do with what Elias saw 3 months ago. Elias shifted uncomfortably. I didn't think it was relevant. Tell me anyway. I saw Preston Woods arguing with Headmaster Gregory Cruz in the parking lot late one evening. I was leaving after fixing an emergency pipe burst. They were shouting about money, about protecting the school's reputation. Woods said something about making problems disappear. A week later, a teacher named Edward Watts was fired. Suddenly, no explanation, Isaac felt the familiar tingle of a case that was deeper than it appeared. Did you tell anyone about this? No. I'm on my own business, Mr. Hopkins. I've worked at that school for 15 years without any problems. Until now. Until someone needed a convenient scapegoat. Isaac stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, painting the buildings in shades of amber and rust. Behind him, he could hear Trinity's anxious breathing, Elias's quiet resignation. I'll take your case, he said, turning back. But I need you to understand something. Damian Hoffman doesn't lose. He'll come at us with everything he has. The school, the girl's family, the media. They'll paint you as a monster. I can handle it, Elias said. I just want the truth to come out. Then we'll give them the truth. Isaac extended his hand. All of it. The Multnomah County Courthouse was a fortress of marble and glass, built to inspire both awe and intimidation. Isaac climbed the steps with Sage beside him, both carrying briefcases loaded with depositions, medical reports, and witness statements. The trial started in 3 days, and they've been working 18-hour days preparing. The witness list Hoffman filed is extensive, Sage said, flipping through her tablet. 12 character witnesses for Sienna, for expert witnesses on trauma response, the school counselor, 3 of Sienna's friends. And we have Mrs. Chun, the work logs, and Elias's spotless 15-year record. Isaac pushed through the heavy doors. We need more. They headed to the prosecution's office for the mandatory pretrial conference. These meetings were supposed to facilitate cooperation, but with Hoffman, they were just another battlefield. Damian Hoffman's office was exactly what Isaac expected. Expensive, meticulously organized, and decorated with framed newspaper articles about his biggest convictions. The man himself sat behind an oak desk that probably cost more than Isaac's car, his perfectly styled dark hair and designer suit projecting confidence and power. Isaac Hopkins, Hoffman said, not bothering to stand. Still taking on lost causes? Still winning them? Isaac replied smoothly, taking a seat without being invited. Sage remained standing, her tablet ready. Hoffman smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Not this time. Elias Larson is going to prison, and we both know it. I have a victim who is brutalized, physical evidence, and a defendant whose only alibi is a work log that could have been falsified. The medical examiner's report contradicts your timeline. The medical examiner gave a range. Trauma affects people differently. The jury will understand that. Isaac leaned back, studying his opponent. Hoffman was too confident. Even for him. What are you really after here, Damian? This case is solid for the defense. Elias has witnesses placing him somewhere else during the attack. The injuries are inconsistent with your theory. Any reasonable person can see. Any reasonable person will see a powerful man in a position of authority who attacked a vulnerable teenage girl. Hoffman interrupted, his voice sharp. That's what sells, Isaac. That's what juries believe. There it was. The political angle. Hoffman needed a conviction, needed the headlines, needed to be the man who protected innocent children from predators. We're done here, Isaac said, standing. See you in court. As they walked toward the elevator, Sage whispered, He's hiding something. Did you see how he reacted when you mentioned the medical examiner? I saw. Isaac pressed the button. Run a background check on me. And on Brian White. I want to know everything. The elevator doors opened, and Isaac found himself face to face with Preston Woods himself. The real estate mogul was 60, silver-haired, with the kind of tan that came from Caribbean vacations and the kind of watch that cost more than some houses. Mr. Hopkins, Woods said, his voice dripping with false concern. I heard you're representing the man who attacked that poor girl at my son's school. Allegedly attacked. And yes, I'm representing Elias Larson. Woods stepped closer, his cologne expensive and overpowering. That school is important to me. My son's education is important to me. I'd hate to see it dragged through a lengthy, ugly trial. Perhaps your client should consider a plea deal. Perhaps you should let the justice system work. The justice system, Woods laughed softly, works for people who understand how to use it. Hoffman understands. I understand. You're just a small-time defense attorney playing hero. Sage touched Isaac's arm gently, a warning. They stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed, Isaac saw Woods pull out his phone, already making a call. He just threatened us, Sage said once they were alone. No, he made a mistake. Isaac corrected. He showed us he's personally invested in this conviction. Now we need to figure out why. Back at the office, Isaac worked late into the night. The case files spread across his desk like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit. Elias's work logs, Sienna's medical reports, the school's statement, Brian White's social media, which Sage had managed to archive before it could be deleted. His phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. Hopkins. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a young female voice, scared and shaking. Mr. Hopkins? My name is Oakley Myers. I'm a student at Cascade Heights. I need to tell you something about Sienna Cox. Isaac grabbed a pen. I'm listening. She's lying. About the attack. I mean, she was hurt, but... A long pause. It wasn't Mr. Larson. It was Brian White, her boyfriend. He found out she was going to break up with him, that she was scared of him. They fought in the basement. He went crazy. Isaac's heart raced. Did you see this happen? I heard it. I was in the music room above the basement. The ventilation shafts carry sound. I heard them screaming, heard him hitting her, heard her begging him to stop. Her voice broke. Then I heard him say, "We'll blame the janitor. My dad will fix everything." Oakley, will you testify to this? Silence. Then, I can't. Brian's father, he's powerful. My parents work for one of his companies. If I say anything, my whole family suffers. I can protect you. No one can protect me from the Woods family, Mr. Hopkins. I'm sorry. I couldn't let an innocent man go to prison without at least telling someone the truth. But I can't help you. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Isaac sat in the darkness of his office, the city lights flickering through the windows. He had the truth now. But truth without evidence, without witnesses, was just a theory. Sage appeared in the doorway, still dressed from earlier, clearly having worked through the night in her own office. I found something. Edward Watts, the teacher who was fired, he filed a wrongful termination suit against the school. It was settled out of court for a substantial amount, but I got the initial complaint. He claims he was fired after he reported Brian White for threatening a female student. Isaac looked up. The school covered it up. Not just the school. Guess who mediated the settlement? She turned her tablet around. Gregory Cruz and Preston Woods, with legal counsel provided by the firm that employs Damien Hoffman's wife. The pieces were sliding into place. A pattern of protection, of making problems disappear. And now Elias Larson was just another problem to be erased. We have 2 days until trial, Isaac said, his mind racing. Give me everything you can on Brian White. Traffic tickets, school records, anything. And find Edward Watts. If he was brave enough to file a complaint once, maybe he'll be brave enough to tell us what he knows. On it. Sage paused at the door. Isaac, we're going to win this, right? He thought of Elias Larson's tired eyes, of a man who'd worked honestly for 15 years only to be sacrificed for someone else's crimes. He thought of Sienna Cox, a victim being manipulated by her abuser. He thought of Oakley Myers, too scared to come forward, and of all the other students at Cascade Heights who knew the truth but feared the consequences. "Yes," he said firmly. "We're going to win." The courtroom was packed. Media filled the back rows, cameras ready for the moment they'd be allowed to photograph the proceedings. Preston Woods sat behind the prosecution, his presence alone a statement of power. Gregory Cruz was there too, the headmaster looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Sienna Cox sat at the prosecution table with her mother, Melanie Edwards. The girl looked fragile, younger than 17, with her dark hair pulled back and minimal makeup. She'd been coached well, Isaac noted. The perfect victim. Elias entered through the side door with Deputy Marshal Emmanuel Martin, who'd been assigned to the case. Isaac had worked with Martin before. He was fair, professional, and one of the few people in the courthouse who seemed immune to Preston Woods' influence. All rise for the Honorable Judge Ezra Lambert. Judge Lambert was 68, with steel gray hair and a reputation for running a tight courtroom. He was old school, unimpressed by theatrics, and had once thrown Damian Hoffman's case out for prosecutorial misconduct. That had been early in Hoffman's career, before he'd learned to hide his tactics better. "Be seated," Lambert said, his voice carrying authority. "We are here for the case of the state versus Elias Larson. Mr. Hoffman, your opening statement." Hoffman stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. He was performing now, and he knew every eye in the room was on him. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about trust." Elias Larson held a position of trust at Cascade Heights Preparatory Academy. Students walked past him every day, said hello, asked him for help. He was part of the fabric of that school. Hoffman paused, letting his words sink in. Sienna Cox trusted him. On October 15th, she went to the basement looking for maintenance assistance. What she found was a predator. Isaac watched the jury. 12 faces, 12 strangers who would decide Elias's fate. 3 older women who looked sympathetic to Sienna. 4 middle-aged men who seemed skeptical. 5 younger jurors who could go either way. Hoffman continued, painting a vivid picture of the alleged attack, describing Sienna's injuries in clinical detail designed to provoke outrage. He spoke of trauma, of how victims often can't immediately report their abuse, of how the defendant's work log meant nothing because anyone could falsify a digital entry. By the end of this trial, Hoffman concluded, "You will have no doubt that Elias Larson is guilty, and I will ask you to hold him accountable for his crimes." The prosecutor sat, looking satisfied. "Mr. Hopkins?" Judge Lambert prompted. Isaac stood slowly, deliberately. He didn't button his jacket or straighten his tie. He wanted to look like what he was, a working attorney who cared about facts, not flash. "Members of the jury, Mr. Hoffman just told you a story. It was compelling. It was emotional. It was designed to make you angry." Isaac walked toward the jury box. But it wasn't the truth. The truth is that Elias Larson was somewhere else when Sienna Cox was attacked. The truth is that the medical evidence contradicts the prosecution's timeline. The truth is that someone hurt this young woman, but it wasn't my client. He let that hang in the air. During this trial, you're going to hear about work logs that were verified by digital timestamps. You're going to hear from witnesses who saw Elias in the main office during the exact time of the attack. You're going to hear from medical professionals who will testify that the injuries could not have occurred when the prosecution claims. Isaac returned to the defense table, and you're going to hear about reasonable doubt. Because when you look at the actual evidence, not the story, not the emotion, but the facts, you'll see that doubt everywhere. He sat down. Elias gave him a small nod of gratitude. "Mr. Hoffman, call your first witness," Lambert said. "The state calls Sienna Cox." The girl walked to the witness, stand with her mother's hand on her shoulder until she had to let go. She was sworn in, her voice barely audible when she promised to tell the truth. Hoffman's questioning was gentle, almost paternal. He walked Sienna through her day, leading up to the alleged attack. She described going to the basement to look for Mr. Larson because she'd lost her student ID and thought it might have fallen near the furnace room, where she'd been earlier that week. "And what happened when you found Mr. Larson?" Hoffman asked softly. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. He was angry. I'd never seen him angry before. He grabbed my arm and pushed me against the wall. I tried to scream, but he put his hand over my mouth. Isaac watched her carefully. The tears were real. The fear was real. What was the story? He hit me, she continued, her voice breaking. I don't remember much after that. I think I blacked out. When I woke up, I was on the floor and everything hurt. Why didn't you immediately tell someone? Hoffman asked. I was scared, confused. I just wanted to get away. I stumbled to the music wing, and that's where Mrs. Leo Wilson found me. No further questions, Your Honor. Lambert looked at Isaac. Cross-examination. Isaac stood. This was the delicate part. Push too hard, and the jury would see him as attacking a victim. Too soft, and he'd accomplish nothing. Miss Cox, I'm sorry for what happened to you, he began, and meant it. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest. Can you do that? Yes, she whispered. You said you went to the basement looking for your ID, but your student ID was found in your locker the next day, correct? I didn't know that at the time. The basement is locked after 2 p.m. unless maintenance is down there. How did you get in? Sienna hesitated. The door was open. Mr. Larson's work log shows he left the basement at 2:45 and locked it behind him. The school security system confirms the basement door wasn't opened again until 3:15 when Mrs. Wilson found you. Can you explain that? I don't know. Maybe he came back. Isaac pulled out a document. Your medical report indicates your injuries occurred within 15 minutes of being examined at 3:30 p.m. That would place the attack between 3:15 and 3:20. Mr. Larson was in the main office during that entire time. How do you explain that? Objection, Hoffman said. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Hopkins. Miss Cox, is it possible you're mistaken about who attacked you? Her eyes widened. No, it was him. It was definitely Mr. Larson, even though he was physically somewhere else at the time. I know what I saw. Isaac paused, then asked quietly, were you dating Brian White in October? Sienna's face went pale. That's not relevant. Your Honor, it's absolutely relevant, Isaac said. Miss Cox had a relationship with Brian White, the son of school board director Preston Woods. 3 weeks before this incident, she posted on social media about being hurt by someone she trusted. Was that about Brian, Miss Cox? Objection. Hoffman was on his feet. This is victim-blaming speculation. Your Honor, the defense has the right to explore alternative theories, Isaac argued. I'll allow it. But tread carefully, Mr. Hopkins, Lambert warned. Isaac turned back to Sienna. Did Brian White ever hurt you? No. Did he become angry when you tried to break up with him? We didn't. I wasn't. She was crumbling now, her coach confidence evaporating. Did Brian White attack you in that basement? Objection. Hoffman's voice was sharp. Your Honor, this is completely unfounded. Before Lambert could rule, something unexpected happened. A man in the gallery stood up. It was Edward Watts, the fired teacher. Sage had found him last night and convinced him to attend. That boy is dangerous. Watts shouted. I reported him for threatening students, and the school fired me to keep it quiet. The courtroom erupted. Lambert's gavel came down like thunder. Order. Order in this court. Deputies moved toward Watts, but the damage was done. The jury had heard it. The media had heard it. Everyone had heard it. In the chaos, Isaac saw Hoffman's face. Not anger, fear. And in that moment, Isaac knew they were closer to the truth than anyone had realized. But he also knew Hoffman wouldn't go down without a fight. Judge Lambert called a recess after the outburst, ordering Edward Watts removed from the courtroom. The media swarmed the hallway, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. Isaac, Sage, and Elias retreated to a conference room the courthouse had provided for the defense. That wasn't planned, Isaac said, though internally he was grateful for Watts' timing. But it helps us. Hoffman's going to come back harder, Sage warned, pulling up her notes on her tablet. He'll try to discredit Watts, paint him as a disgruntled former employee. Let him try. We just need to plant enough doubt. Isaac turned to Elias. How are you holding up? The older man's hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. I just want this over with. Hearing her lie like that, seeing Preston Woods sitting there like he owns the place, it makes me sick. We're going to expose them, Isaac promised. All of them. A knock on the door interrupted them. Deputy Marshal Martin entered, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Hopkins? Mr. Hoffman wants to meet with you. Privately." Interesting. Hoffman never asked for private meetings mid-trial, unless he was either ready to offer a plea deal or worried about something he didn't want on the record. "Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes." Isaac found Hoffman in an empty jury deliberation room, pacing like a caged animal. The prosecutor's usual polish had slipped. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. "We need to talk," Hoffman said without preamble. "I'm listening." Hoffman pulled out a slim folder from his briefcase. "This stays between us. Attorney to attorney. That depends on what's in it." The prosecutor hesitated, then slid the folder across the table. "I received this anonymously yesterday. I've been trying to verify it, but—" He trailed off, his jaw tight. Isaac opened the folder. Inside was a series of photographs, time-stamped and dated. Brian White entering the Cascade Heights basement at 3:05 p.m. on October 15th. Sienna Cox following him 3 minutes later. Both of them emerging separately 20 minutes later, Brian looking agitated, Sienna visibly injured and disoriented. There were also text messages, screenshots from Brian's phone. Messages to friends bragging about keeping his girl in line. Messages to his father asking him to fix the janitor problem like you fixed the teacher problem. Isaac's pulse quickened. This was everything. This was proof. "Where did you get this?" he asked, though he already suspected. Someone at the school, someone who'd been watching, someone who'd finally had enough. Maybe even Oakley Myers, despite her fear. "I told you it was anonymous. Left in my office mailbox." Hoffman rubbed his face. "Look, Hopkins, I didn't know. When I took this case, it was straightforward. Girl assaulted, witness statements pointing to larceny, physical evidence. I didn't question it. Because you didn't want to question it," Isaac said coldly. "This case was political gold for you. The perfect prosecution to launch your run for DA. "Maybe," Hoffman admitted, "but I'm not corrupt. I won't put an innocent man in prison. Not even for my career." Isaac studied his opponent. Damian Hoffman was ambitious, ruthless, and morally flexible. But there was a line he wouldn't cross, and apparently, they'd found it. "So what now?" Isaac asked. "You going to dismiss the case?" "I can't. Not without more verification. If I drop charges now based on anonymous evidence, Preston Woods will destroy me. He has the resources, the connections." Hoffman met Isaac's eyes. "But if this came out in court, if you introduced it during trial, you want me to do your job for you? I want justice. Same as you. I just can't be the one who brings down Preston Woods. But you?" Hoffman smiled grimly. "You're the defense attorney. You're supposed to fight for your client. No one can touch you for that." Isaac looked at the folder again. Every instinct told him this was a trap, that Hoffman was using him somehow. But the evidence was real. The timestamps matched. The text messages could be verified. "I'll need the original files," Isaac said. "If I'm going to present this, I need to authenticate it. I'll have my tech analyst send everything to your expert." Confidentially, Hoffman stood. "Hopkins, I know we've been adversaries for years, but I respect you. You actually care about the truth. Don't mistake necessity for virtue, Hoffman. You're doing this because you have to, not because you want to." The prosecutor didn't deny it. He simply left, leaving the folder on the table. Isaac returned to the conference room, where Sage and Elias waited anxiously. He laid out the photographs and documents. "This is it," Sage breathed, scrolling through the digital files on her tablet that Hoffman's analyst had already sent. "This proves Brian White is the attacker. This proves the Woods family orchestrated the cover-up. It also proves Hoffman knew about it and was willing to prosecute anyway," Isaac noted. "Or at least, he's been sitting on this evidence. So what do we do?" Elias asked. Isaac considered the question. He could introduce the evidence carefully, build up to it, use it as part of a measured defense strategy. Or he could detonate it like a bomb in open court, let the explosion consume everyone who'd participated in this conspiracy. "We do what we came here to do," he said. "We expose the truth. All of it. And we let the chips fall where they may." Court reconvened at 2 p.m. Hoffman called his next witness, the school counselor, who testified about trauma responses and how victims might misremember details. Then came Sienna's friends, who spoke about how withdrawn she'd become after the alleged attack, how scared she'd been of Mr. Larson. Isaac barely cross-examined them. He was waiting. On day 3 of the trial, Hoffman rested his case. Judge Lambert looked at Isaac expectantly. The defense calls Edward Watts. The fired teacher took the stand, clearly nervous but determined. Isaac walked him through his history at Cascade Heights, his stellar record, his dedication to students. Mr. Watts, why were you fired from Cascade Heights? I reported Brian White for threatening a female student. The girl's name was Maya Carter. Brian had been harassing her for weeks, and when she rejected him, he cornered her in the library and told her he'd make her sorry. Watts's voice shook with anger. I reported it to Headmaster Cruz. The next day, I was called into his office along with Preston Woods. They told me I was fired for creating a disruptive environment. Did you file a complaint? I filed a wrongful termination suit. The school settled for $200,000 on the condition I sign an NDA. Let's look directly at the jury. But I won't watch an innocent man go to prison because I was too scared to break that agreement. Sue me, Mr. Woods. I don't care anymore. Preston Woods stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, this witness is violating a legal agreement. Sit down, Mr. Woods, or I'll have you removed, Lambert said sharply. Continue, Mr. Hopkins. Mr. Watts, in your observation, was Brian White capable of violence? Absolutely. And his father was capable of covering it up. Hoffman's cross-examination was weak, half-hearted. He'd already decided how this was going to end. The defense calls Lila Watkins, Isaac announced. A woman in her 30s approached the stand. She was Cascade Heights' IT director, and Sage had worked with her to retrieve the basement security footage that had mysteriously malfunctioned the day of the attack. Ms. Watkins, you manage the school's security system, correct? Yes, I do. Can you explain what happened to the basement cameras on October 15th? They were manually disabled at 2:50 p.m. The override code used was from Preston Woods' administrative access. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Preston Woods' face turned red. Can you tell the jury who entered the basement between 3 and 3:30 p.m. that day, based on the door access logs? Brian White entered at 3:05. Sienna Cox entered at 3:08. Mr. Larson's access card wasn't used after 2:45 when he left and locked the door. Perfect. Pieces falling into place. Your Honor, Isaac said. At this time, the defense would like to introduce Exhibit D, 45 through D67. He distributed copies to the jury, to Judge Lambert, and to the prosecution. The photographs, the text messages, the timeline, all of it. The courtroom fell silent as people absorbed what they were seeing. Preston Woods shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is a setup. These are fabricated. Mr. Woods, Lambert's gavel cracked. Another outburst, and you'll be held in contempt. Hoffman stood slowly. Your Honor, the prosecution needs to examine this evidence. You've had it for 2 days, Counselor, Isaac said coolly. Your analyst verified its authenticity and sent it to my expert. Or did you forget? Hoffman's face went white. He'd been caught in his own game. Isaac turned to Judge Lambert. Your Honor, I'd like to read one text message in particular. Sent from Brian White to his father, Preston Woods, on October 15th at 6:30 p.m. It says, Dad, I messed up. Sienna tried to leave me. I lost it. But don't worry, we blame the janitor like you said. Make this go away like you made what's go away. The jury gasped. The media exploded with whispered excitement. And in the prosecution's seating area, Sienna Cox stood up suddenly. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. Brian said he'd hurt my mom if I didn't lie. He said his dad would protect him, that no one would believe me anyway. She turned to Elias. Mr. Larson, I'm so sorry. You were always nice to me. I never wanted to hurt you. Her mother, Melanie Edwards, wrapped her arms around her daughter, glaring daggers at Preston Woods. The courtroom descended into chaos. Lambert's gavel rang out repeatedly. Deputies moved to restrain Preston Woods, who was shouting about lawsuits and conspiracies. In the back, Isaac saw Damian Hoffman sitting very still, his political career imploding in real time, but his conscience apparently intact. Order! Lambert bellowed. "This court is in recess while I review this evidence. Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Hoffman, my chambers." Now, Judge Lambert's chambers were spacious but cluttered with law books, case files, and a collection of antique gavels displayed on the wall. The judge sat behind his desk, reading through the evidence Isaac had presented while both attorneys stood waiting. Finally, Lambert removed his reading glasses and fixed Hoffman with a stare that could have melted steel. "Counselor, would you care to explain how the prosecution received exculpatory evidence 2 days ago and failed to disclose it to the defense?" Hoffman's jaw tightened. "Your Honor, I received that evidence anonymously. I was attempting to verify its authenticity before." "Before what?" "Before you decided whether justice mattered more than your conviction rate." Lambert's voice was ice. "You know the law, Mr. Hoffman. Brady violations are serious misconduct. I disclosed it during trial," Hoffman said weakly. "No, Mr. Hopkins discovered it and forced your hand." Lambert turned to Isaac. "How did you obtain this evidence?" "The prosecutor gave it to me during a recess," Isaac said truthfully, "along with verification from his own technical analyst. I then had my own expert confirm its authenticity." Lambert leaned back in his chair. "This is a disaster. A young woman was assaulted and then coerced into perjuring herself. An innocent man was prosecuted. A powerful family used their influence to obstruct justice. And the prosecution, at minimum, showed terrible judgment." "Your Honor, I want to do the right thing now," Hoffman said. "I'm prepared to move for dismissal of all charges against Elias Larson." "You're damn right you are," Lambert said. "But that's just the beginning. I'm ordering a full investigation into Preston Woods, Brian White, and Gregory Cruz for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. I'm also referring this matter to the State Bar for their review of your conduct, Mr. Hoffman." Hoffman nodded, accepting the consequences. Whatever political ambitions he'd had were finished now. But at least he'd done the right thing in the end, even if it was only to save himself from complete professional ruin. "What about Sienna Cox?" Isaac asked. "She was a victim who was manipulated into lying." Lambert considered this. "That's up to Mr. Hoffman, but I'd recommend immunity in exchange for her truthful testimony against the Woods family." "Agreed," Hoffman said immediately. "Get back in that courtroom and do your job, counselor. The right way this time." They returned to find the courtroom still packed, the tension palpable. Elias sat at the defense table with Sage, his expression carefully neutral, but Isaac could see the hope in his eyes. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Once everyone was seated, Hoffman stood. "Your Honor, in light of new evidence that has come to the prosecution's attention, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Elias Larson with prejudice." "Motion granted," Lambert said. "Mr. Larson, you are free to go. The court apologizes for what you've endured." Elias stood slowly, as if he couldn't quite believe it was over. Trinity was crying in the gallery, and several jurors were nodding with satisfaction. But Lambert wasn't finished. "Furthermore, I am issuing arrest warrants for Preston Woods and Brian White on charges of assault, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Bailiff, please inform the police." He looked at Gregory Cruz, who had gone pale. "Headmaster Cruz, I strongly suggest you retain legal counsel. The district attorney's office will be investigating your role in this matter." Preston Woods tried to leave through a side exit, but deputies blocked his path. His facade of power crumbled as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The cameras captured every moment. Brian White wasn't in the courtroom, but Isaac knew he wouldn't run far. Boys like that always believed their fathers would save them. But not this time. As the deputies led Preston Woods away, he locked eyes with Isaac. "You have no idea what you've done. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy your career, your reputation." "You'll do nothing," Isaac said calmly. "You're finished, Mr. Woods, and your son is going to face justice for what he did." The media swarmed as they left the courtroom. Reporters shouted questions at Elias, at Isaac, at Hoffman. But Isaac kept moving, guiding his client through the chaos until they reached the relative quiet of the hallway outside. Sage was already on her phone, coordinating with law enforcement. Brian White was just picked up at the airport. He was trying to catch a flight to Canada. Of course he was. Elias turned to Isaac, his eyes wet with tears. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you enough. You don't need to thank me. You just need to go home and start rebuilding your life." Isaac shook his hand firmly. "And send me an invoice for lost wages. We're going to sue Cascade Heights and the Woods family for everything they have." Trinity approached, hugging her brother fiercely before turning to Isaac. "You saved him. You saved our entire family." "No," Isaac said, thinking of Oakley Myers' phone call, of Edward Watts's courage, of Sage's relentless investigation, of Hoffman's unexpected conscience. "A lot of people saved him. I just made sure the truth came out." That evening, Isaac sat in his office, the city lights glittering below. The news was running the story on every channel. Preston Woods' perp walk, Brian White being led into the police station, Gregory Cruz announcing his resignation, Damian Hoffman's brief statement accepting responsibility for his failures, and Sienna Cox, in a recorded interview with authorities, finally telling the truth about what had happened in that basement. About Brian's violence, his manipulation, his threats. About being forced to lie to protect her mother. Sage knocked and entered with 2 glasses of scotch. "I thought you might need this." "You thought right." Isaac accepted the glass. "How's Elias?" "Already got 3 job offers from schools that heard his story. Turns out being the victim of a conspiracy makes you pretty employable." She smiled. "Also, Edward Watts called. He wants to be a witness in the civil suit." "Good. We're going to need him." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks. "Can I ask you something?" Sage said. "What did you know Hoffman was going to turn?" Isaac considered the question. "When I saw fear in his eyes instead of anger." "Hoffman's ambitious, but he's not evil." He realized he'd been played, that Preston Woods had manipulated him into prosecuting an innocent man. That didn't fit with how he sees himself. "So he gave you the evidence to save face." "He gave me the evidence because it was the only way to expose the truth without completely destroying himself." Smart in a way. Pragmatic. Isaac swirled the scotch in his glass. "I'll never like the man, but I respect that he made the right choice when it counted." "What about Sienna? Do you think she'll be okay?" "Eventually. She's getting therapy, and her mother is supporting her. She was a victim who became a pawn. That's not her fault." Isaac's expression hardened. "Brian White, though? He's going to prison for a long time. Assault, witness tampering, conspiracy. Even his father's money can't save him now." Sage raised her glass. "To justice. To truth." Isaac corrected, clinking his glass against hers. "Justice is what comes after." 3 months later, Isaac stood in the same courthouse, but this time in a civil courtroom. The lawsuit against Preston Woods, Cascade Heights Preparatory Academy, and Gregory Cruz was finally going to trial. The criminal cases had moved swiftly. Brian White had been convicted of assault and witness tampering, sentenced to 8 years in prison. Preston Woods faced trial for conspiracy and obstruction, with a mountain of evidence against him, including testimony from Edward Watts, Lila Watkins, and even some of his own employees who'd finally found the courage to come forward. Gregory Cruz had taken a plea deal, admitting to covering up student complaints in exchange for donations from Preston Woods. He'd lost his license to work in education and receive probation. Damian Hoffman had resigned from the prosecutor's office and now worked for a legal aid clinic, apparently attempting to redeem himself. The state bar had suspended him for 6 months but hadn't disbarred him. Isaac had actually written a letter on his behalf, acknowledging that Hoffman had ultimately done the right thing. Now came the part Isaac enjoyed most, making the guilty pay. The civil case was straightforward. Elias Larson was suing for wrongful prosecution, emotional distress, lost wages, and damage to reputation. The amount requested was $7 million. Preston Woods' attorney, a sharp woman named Maya Carter, tried to argue that her client had been deceived by his son, that he'd acted in good faith. But Isaac had the text messages. He had testimony from former employees about Woods' pattern of making problems disappear. He had evidence of payments to school administrators, of NDAs signed under duress, of a systematic culture of cover-ups. The trial lasted a week. Isaac called witness after witness, each one adding another brick to the wall of evidence. Edward Watts testified about his termination. Lila Watkins explained how she'd been pressured to delete security footage. Former Cascade Heights students spoke about unreported incidents involving Brian White and how complaints had vanished into administrative black holes. Sage had done brilliant work uncovering financial records showing payments from Woods to Gregory Cruz that coincided with student complaints being dismissed. Money always left a trail, and she'd followed it meticulously. On the seventh day, Isaac delivered his closing argument. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about accountability. Preston Woods used his wealth and influence to protect his violent son. He destroyed Edward Watts's career. He intimidated witnesses. He corrupted school administrators. And he orchestrated a conspiracy that nearly sent an innocent man to prison for a crime his son committed. Isaac walked along the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. Elias Larson spent months believing his life was over. He lost his job, his reputation, and his sense of safety. He had to watch as people he'd worked with for 15 years looked at him like a monster. All because Preston Woods decided his son's freedom was worth more than the truth. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. The defendant will argue that $7 million is excessive. I would argue it's not nearly enough to compensate for what Mr. Larson endured. But this isn't just about compensation. It's about sending a message that wealth doesn't put you above the law. That power doesn't give you the right to destroy innocent lives. That in America, even the richest man can be held accountable. Isaac returned to the defense table. Fine for the plaintiff. Award him what he's owed. And show Preston Woods that justice isn't for sale. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. We fined for the plaintiff, Elias Larson, in the amount of $7 million. Preston Woods' face remained impassive, but Isaac saw the fury in his eyes. The real estate mogul was already facing criminal trials that could put him in prison. Now he was financially ruined as well. His companies were being investigated. His assets were being frozen. The empire he'd built was crumbling. Good. Outside the courthouse, media crews waited. Isaac stood with Elias, Trinity, and Sage as cameras flashed. "Mr. Larson, how does it feel to have won your case?" a reporter asked. Elias, looking healthier than he had in months, smiled. "It feels like I can finally breathe again. Mr. Hopkins gave me my life back." "Mr. Hopkins, what's next for you?" Isaac thought about the 23 other cases currently on his desk. The single mother accused of theft by her employer. The veteran facing weapons charges based on questionable evidence. The teenager whose public defender didn't have time to properly investigate his case. "Next, I'm going back to work," Isaac said. "There are a lot of people out there who need someone to fight for them. Do you have a message for other victims of powerful people who abuse their influence?" Isaac looked directly at the camera. "Come forward. Tell the truth. Yes, it's scary. Yes, they'll try to intimidate you. But there are people who will stand with you. There are lawyers who care more about justice than money. There are investigators who won't stop digging until they find the truth." He thought of Oakley Myers, whose anonymous tip had started everything. You're not alone, and they're not untouchable. That night, Isaac's office was quiet except for the sound of city traffic below. Sage had gone home. The other associates had left hours ago. But Isaac remained, reviewing the files on his desk, preparing for the next case. His phone buzzed with a text from Elias. "Started my new job today. Assistant Maintenance Director at Portland Community College. They gave me a standing ovation when the dean introduced me. Thank you for believing in me." Isaac smiled and replied, "You earned it. Stay in touch." Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. "Mr. Hopkins, my name is Oakley Myers. I'm the one who called you that night. I just wanted to say thank you for having the courage to use what I told you. I'm starting college in the fall, and I'm majoring in political science. Maybe one day I can fight for people like you do." Isaac stared at that message for a long moment. Then he typed back, "You already did fight, Oakley. You were braver than you know. Good luck in college. If you ever need a reference for law school, call me." He set down his phone and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Preston Woods was probably plotting revenge, try to salvage his empire, raging against the injustice of facing consequences. Brian White was in prison, learning that Daddy's money couldn't protect him anymore. Gregory Cruz was unemployed, his reputation destroyed. And Elias Larson was working again, sleeping peacefully, no longer afraid. Isaac raised his coffee mug in a silent toast to truth, to justice, and to the long, difficult work of making sure the two aligned. Then he opened the next case file and got back to work. 6 months later, Isaac was invited to speak at a legal ethics conference. As he stood at the podium, looking out at the audience of attorneys, judges, and law students, he thought about what to say. The Elias Larson case taught me something important, he began. It's not enough to be a good lawyer. You have to be willing to fight when everyone says you'll lose. You have to believe in your client, even when the evidence looks bad. And you have to remember that the truth is worth more than your win-loss record. He paused, scanning the crowd. Damian Hoffman is here today. He made mistakes in that case. Serious mistakes. But when it mattered, he chose truth over ambition. That took courage. Isaac nodded at Hoffman, who sat in the third row, looking uncomfortable but present. We need more prosecutors like that. More defense attorneys willing to take the hard cases. More judges who won't be intimidated by wealth or power. Preston Woods and his son believed they were untouchable. They were wrong. But they were only wrong because enough people stood up and said no. Edward Watts, who sacrificed his NDA settlement to tell the truth. Lila Watkins, who risked her job to provide evidence. Sienna Cox, who found the courage to recant her false testimony. Oakley Myers, who made an anonymous call that started everything. Isaac's voice grew stronger. And yes, because Elias Larson never gave up believing that someone would listen. He looked out at the young law students in the audience. Some of you will become prosecutors. Some will be defense attorneys. Some will be judges or work in corporate law or become politicians. Whatever you do, remember this. The law is only as good as the people who practice it. We have the power to protect the innocent or to destroy them. Choose wisely. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, Hoffman approached Isaac in the hallway. That was generous of you, the former prosecutor said, mentioning me like that. You earned it, Isaac replied. You made the right choice when it counted. That's what matters. Hoffman extended his hand. If you ever need a second chair on a case, call me. I work cheap these days. Isaac shook his hand. I just might do that. As he walked out of the conference center, Isaac's phone rang. It was Sage. Boss, we have a new client. A nurse who's being scapegoated for a hospital's negligence. The hospital's legal team has unlimited resources, and they're trying to destroy her career. Isaac smiled. Tell her I'll take the case. And Sage, start digging. Let's find the truth. Already on it, Isaac climbed into his car, the city sprawling before him. There were millions of people out there, and some of them needed help. Some of them needed someone to believe in them, to fight for them, to make sure the truth came out. He thought of his father's nameplate on his desk, thought of all the cases he'd won and the few he'd lost, thought of Elias Larson, who was probably at work right now, fixing something that was broken and making it whole again. That's what Isaac did too, in his own way. He fixed broken cases. He made broken systems work. He gave broken people their lives back. And he'd keep doing it, one case at a time, for as long as he could. Because that's what justice looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but earned.